this edition of The High Strangeness Factor. I am your host, Steve Ward. On The High Strangeness Factor, while we explore all aspects of the paranormal and the unexplained, we put a special emphasis on the parallels and underlying patterns that link areas of research that, on the surface, seem to have no connection. Areas such as UFO encounters, cryptid sightings, and ghostly activity. And we strive to uncover those hidden links. On today's show, we welcome John Boudries. And John has a BA in psychology and an MSA with a concentration in international business. He has additional training in numerous psychological disciplines, manufacturing philosophies, shamanic and metaphysical techniques, regression hypnosis, woodworking, and audio. John worked for a number of years as a counselor and group therapist for several organizations. He then worked for a time as a custom furniture maker and wood model maker. He is a civilian but retired from the U.S. Army as a specialist in manufacturing equipment, production process improvement, and was a technical negotiator for Abrams tank and other vehicle contracts. Subsequently, he was asked by several DoD organizations to return as a consultant on various vehicle programs, most notably the mine-resistant ambush protected vehicle production and repair process. He spends his free time as a volunteer field investigator for MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and is also with their Experiencer research team. He enjoys investigating other areas of the paranormal as well as supporting animal rights, creative woodworking, and he is involved in creating audio speaker designs and enjoying his grandchildren. John, welcome to the High Strangeness Factor.
Thank you, Steve.
Nice to have you on. Well, we've talked before. John and I know each other, like so many good people, through Michigan MUFON, headed by Bill Konkoleski. And so it's been great because it's the Michigan chapter of the Mutual UFO Network, and you meet a lot of great people there. John and I have had many conversations in the past, so we have a lot to talk about, and an hour is going to be hard to cram it all in there, but we'll try. So, John, one thing I don't know about you is what spurred your interest initially? How did you get into all this?
Well, I've had like a number of people. It seemed like an interest budded in me back in like junior high, and I found myself. I think my first book I picked up on paranormal phenomena was Charles Fort, Book of the Damned.
Oh yeah!
And, like wow, all this neat stuff, and that included ghosts and ESP and then I started reading some UFO books, and I thought, wow, visitors from other wherevers. And I became a member of NICAP and APRO back in the day.
Yes. By the way, let me just interrupt you for a second. For those two or three people out there that don't know who Charles Fort was, he was the guy that, back in the about 1910, was it? He would get together, he would go through all these scientific journals, and he'd find all these anomalies that were reported by different scientific journals, pulled them all together in 4 books, the Book of the Damned, Low, and other ones, and really mess with people. It's like, hey, scientists reported this stuff, falls of fish from the sky, strange lights in the sky, all kinds of anomalies. So, and then you said that I got my interest started in junior high, and I was also a member of APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and NICAP. And what other books did you spurred your interest back then?
Well, I read some of J.B. Rhine's stuff on ESP, and I actually made my own set of Zener cards, the ones with the wavy lines, the triangle, the circle.
Yeah.
And there's 5 different symbols, and you make 5 cards of each, and then so you have a deck of 25, and it's sort of like a deck of cards where people are trying to guess what card is next. And I was doing studies. I actually came up with a finding that most ESP researchers will put a supposed psychic under a grueling, let's do 100 tests, let's do 1,000 tests, and then average it all out, and they find maybe a slight increase over chance. And what I did is I separated it out back in junior high into, okay, what was the first guess, the accuracy of the first guess? What was the accuracy of the second guess? What was the accuracy of the third guess? And I found that the first, second guesses were usually the most accurate. The biggest percentage of correct hits occurred in the first and second. And then it tapered off after that. And I kind of came to the conclusion that maybe psychic ability is a bit like a weak battery in a flashlight. You can push on the button, the light will come on dimly, and then because the battery's almost dead, it fades out. If you shut it off and let it sit for a while, it'll sort of recharge itself. You can hit the button again and it'll come on for a little bit. It's like we have a little bit of a battery that needs recharging, but it is available to us to tell us there's a tiger behind the tree or something to save our lives and give us information. And then
that's actually a good. I never thought about that, but I used to did those cards as well, and I was terrible at it. One time I was at somebody's house where we were doing it, and a lady was figuring out ahead of time what I was going to say, what my guess was going to be, and she was accurate on that almost exclusively, but I got them all wrong. So somehow she was picking up on what I was going to say. It was really strange.
Yeah, there was one person I recall. I had different pictures that I asked people to draw what they thought was on this picture inside the envelope. And one of the pictures I had was I'd cut the Land O'Lakes carton picture with the cows, the happy cows, and the rolling hillside with a little barn in the background and like sputter. And the person drew a picture of rolling hills, a little barn, and maybe something like a cow in there. I don't know. A skeptic might say it was chance, but I find no. What were the odds of them drawing that over a sailboat or a family or a dog? Something
astronomical.
Yes, yeah. It's like the Project Stargate that is poo-pooed. Like, oh, these men were staring at goats. Ha ha ha. No, they weren't. They were actually doing some incredibly accurate surveillance. And if you read some of the books about Joe Monteagle and those people that talk about Hal Prudoff and people that ran the thing at SRI, they had remarkable.
You're right. Joe McMoneagle, I think, did he saw a missile silo or something like that was still top secret, and it freaked him out. He got it so accurately that he went through all kinds of interrogations because they figured there's no way. Yeah, there's certain remote viewers, and like Ingo Swann's another one who helped develop that program. A gifted psychic he was, and also a natural remote viewer. But there's no question that it's accurate.
But you don't need to. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that are pitching. Okay, we'll teach you how to remote view. If you give me $1,000 and you come to my week-long seminar, you don't need to do that. You just close your eyes and try and imagine yourself at another location. And if you do that, a lot of times you'll get hits. You don't need special training. You don't need to have latitude and longitude. You don't need to have special envelopes or anything. Just try it, and most people can kind of do that.
Do you think with practice they would get better, or is it just
Okay?
And
I was going to say, especially with people that you're emotionally relationship connected with. Like I've talked to a number of friends that I tell my stories about being able to tune in, and we used to go fishing sometimes. My buddies and I would go fishing, and we'd be out in Lake Erie or something, and it was getting to be the middle of the afternoon, and I'd wonder, gee, is my wife pissed off that I'm not home yet, or is she okay with the fact that we're out here fishing? And so I would tune in on her, and I'd see her maybe in the kitchen going, damn it, where is he? And I think, hey, buddy, I say to my friends, hey, buds, we got to pack it up. I got to get home. Or I'd see her laying on the couch reading a mystery, a murder mystery, which she liked to read. And I think, hey, we can keep fishing for a while. In fact, my daughter got so confident of our ability to connect like that. She would sometimes try and send me a message, hey, give me a call. And I'd have this vague feeling like maybe I should call my daughter. And I'd pick up the phone, call her, and she'd say, Dad, what took you so long? I've been sending you a message for the last 20 minutes. It became a reliable way of communicating. And friends I've talked to have said, yeah, sometimes I know if my wife's in trouble or my husband's in trouble, or something big is happening, I can feel like, oh, something's happened with Fred or something's happened with Mary. People in relationships somehow connect more easily. So anyway, you were asking about my whole history. So I got into high school. I was still interested in those topics, reading voraciously. And then I got into college, and it was like, hey, I got a lot to do here. And the interest in UFOs kind of waned because, I don't know, it was one more sighting in the sky, one more light in the sky. It got kind of like boring. So I moved on to other topics. But more recently, maybe about, 5-6 years ago, I finally hooked up Wi-Fi in my house and got Netflix, and poking through the Netflix menu, hey, look at this. Top 10 UFO sightings of all time. Let me see what's been going on since I've not been paying attention all these decades. And one of the first cases that came up was the Bentwaters case in England. I'm not going to go into that just because it's complicated, but it's just a wonderful case. It's like, oh my God, the guy actually reached out and touched a UFO. What did it feel like? That got my interest up. I started to look around a little bit more on the internet, and I found that there's this conference going on in Phoenix, Arizona. It was coming up in about 2 months' time, and I thought, I'm not going to go all the way out to Phoenix for a con. It's going to involve airplane tickets and hotels and fees and blah, blah, blah. And then I thought, hey, I'm retired now. I can do anything I want. I don't particularly care to go on cruises or buy new cars or eat at fancy restaurants or go to the opera, but I'd really like to go to this UFO conference. So I did. I thought, what the heck?
Who spoke at the conference? Who were some of the big names?
Everybody and anybody. I think Jacques Vallée was there.
Oh, man. Yeah, Jacques Vallée. I would love to see him.
Stanton Friedman sitting at a table. You want to talk to him for a while? I met Catherine Martin there for the first time, just as people in the crowd.
And Kathleen Martin, she's Betty Hill's niece, for those that don't know.
Right. People wandering around the hallway. That's how I got to meet Barbara Lamb. She was just standing there. She walks with a cane. I walked up. I chit-chatted with her for a while.
And isn't she well, she's an experiencer, I think, but hasn't she done a great deal of abduction research and regressive hypnosis? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she's anyway, these conferences are great for that. And what's most interesting is that the people that come, there were probably about 2,000 people that showed up at this con. They said they sold 2,000 tickets, over 2,000. So
that's a good showing.
Yeah, to give you an idea of the size of the crowd. And so you're sitting down at lunch, maybe they have lunch breaks, and it runs for 5 days. It's absolutely exhausting, but wonderful.
Oh, man, yeah.
But I was sitting down at lunch the first day, and I turned to the guy next to me, and who was also eating some kind of sandwich that he purchased, and I said, so, you ever seen anything? And he goes, well, yeah, I had this, I was walking my dog behind my house, the schoolyard, and all of a sudden this triangular-shaped object, this huge craft appeared, and it was like floating above the trees, and I tried to run, but I found I was paralyzed, and I looked at the object, and there was a window there, and this guy was staring at me through the window, and even my dog couldn't move, and eventually the thing took off, and I took a napkin, and I said, well, can you draw what you saw? And he drew me a picture, and I thought, what are the odds of running across somebody who had an experience like that? Well, at these UFO conferences, it's quite good. And so I kind of grown to love these things. And because it does cost some money, you're not going to get the person that's picking up pop cans on the side of the road for the deposit, mumbling to themselves and, fried from heavy drug use or something. They're most of the people there are either they've had their own experiences and want to find out more, or they're very interested in the topic or serious researchers. I highly recommend them for anybody that's interested in the topic.
Well, you and I went to the UFO Contact event in Houghton Lake, Michigan last September, yes. And it's the same thing. It was really well run, and it's you spend a lot of time, good speakers, but you also spend a lot of time just talking to people. My two big events were the 76 MUFON Symposium in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which I've talked about before, where J.Allen Hynek attended. But then it was a long dry period in between. It wasn't until 2006, the Mothman Festival Festival, where I was able to meet some more great speakers and researchers. But yes, you're right. It's an absolute, people that are interested in this topic should really try to seek these out and
Yes.
go to them.
Yes. So then I became interested in getting in deeper, and I found out there was this MUFON group. I'd heard of them before, but the Michigan MUFON had you could become a field investigator. So I bought the manual, I took the test, and became a field investigator. And then I mentioned I'd met Catherine Martin and talked to her several times there at the conference. And then I saw there was a little ad in the Michigan or the National MUFON Journal. We're looking for people that want to be part of the ERT team. So I sent an email, say, I don't know if you remember me, Kathy, but we talked at the Phoenix conference, and I'd be interested. So yeah, she said, I remember you, and send in a resume. And so I sent in a resume, and they decided to accept me, but apparently because I had some psych background. And this group is the ERT group is the experiencer research team, and they work strictly with abductees.
But it's associated sort of under the umbrella of MUFON?
Yeah, they're on the same website, but
okay.
They
specialize.
Yeah, I had a long conversation with a field investigator from Ohio just 2 days ago, and we talked about what the difference is between the ERT and being a field investigator. And I said, look, I'm both. I'm a field investigator and an ERT member. And the field investigator basically is, okay, let's see if we can figure out if what this person reported seeing was something conventional, maybe a mistaken airplane, a meteor, a Chinese lantern, a weather balloon, some kind of atmospheric phenomena, So you're kind of playing a bit of a Columbo role, trying to come up with a mundane explanation for what they saw. On the other hand, and then you have to write up a report. What was your report? What were your findings on this? With the abductee, I get referred to a person that thinks they've been abducted and they want to talk to someone, and I talk to them. I listen to their story. I don't have to write up a report. I don't have to make a judgment call. I'm not trying to label them in any way. I compare that role to be much more like a abductee counselor than an abductee detective or something. I'm not a Columbo person with the abductees. I'm not there to judge them or render a verdict on them. Hey, I just listened to you. I may mentally, I may say, whew, this person's in the ozone, or you haven't taken your meds regularly, have you? But that doesn't
of course, on the other hand, you've got some people that have had a really frightening experience, and with your psychology background, is that what you have then?
Yeah.
Where it would come in handy to kind of deal with people like that and kind of help them through what could be a really an emotional experience.
Well, you know what, they talk about people being frightened, and people are some people are scared. Oh my God, it's going to happen to me again, and I don't really like this. Most people are more intrigued by it. There's an organization, you can find them online. Experiencer.org is the website, and they have the name of the group is FREE. I'm not sure what the acronym stands for, FREE.
Okay.
But they have studied all kinds of, sort of like what you're doing, Steve, with the all different types of topics, all different type of phenomena, and they're looking for commonalities. And one of the things they did a survey of something like, it was like several thousand abductees, and they asked if you could, would you want to stop these experiences? And only like 15%, 15% said yes. The rest of them said,
that's interesting.
Yeah, they said no, they don't want to stop. I was talking to an abductee. I've talked to her a couple of times. It's a recent assignment. And she has an implant, what she suspects is an implant. And I'm interested in, I almost got an implant out. I can tell you about that a little bit.
Okay.
But I asked her, I said, so, hey, you thinking about getting this implant taken out? And if you do, I know a lab that will do the analysis of it, but we need to go through a little bit of process. But let's talk about this. And She hesitated. And finally she said, "No, I don't really want it taken out." Well, why? And she said, "Well, if they're using this to find me, I really don't want the experiences to stop. I find them quite interesting."
That surprises me.
She said, "I feel honored." She's had a number of false pregnancies. I talked to a gynecologist, about these false pregnancies. Oh, we see them all the time. There's nothing unusual about that. Well, I don't know. Maybe why do you see them all the time? Is that because aliens are taking the babies and you're just dismissing it? I don't know.
Right. And of course, for those few that don't know, that's a common phenomenon. I think, was it Bud Hopkins that was maybe one of the first ones onto that, where women abductees would go through the symptoms of being pregnant and so forth, and then there'd be no fetus. I mean, it would be gone over a short period of time. But have all the emotional aspects of being pregnant.
The abductees I've spoken to, women who have had this happen, say that the ultrasound clearly showed that there was a fetus there. And then a month later, I went to the doctor and they said, "Well, it's gone." Well, where'd it go? Well, like this gynecologist said I talked to, sometimes it just happens. The body reabsorbs the baby and that's it. Nothing mysterious about it. I don't know. This woman has had like 7 of these.
Oh, my God.
And she's been on the craft, and they've shown her hybrid babies, and she said they're the most beautiful looking babies. They had big eyes, but they were big blue eyes. They kind of look a cross between a gray and a human. But she felt like, wow. And they were telling her, "Hey, we're doing this work with you," and she thought, "Gee, this is kind of important work, I guess." And so she feels honored they picked her. And even though it was kind of scary at first, now she's like, "Oh, I don't want to have the implant taken out because then they might not be able to find me."
That's amazing. My first contact with that was reading, I think it was Bud Hopkins' Intruders years ago. And that was really freaking me out because at that time period, I still am very much on the John Keel page, where you look at these things as being perhaps more not psychological, that's not the word, but maybe projections and things that are temporal. Well, I think there's two. I won't get into it too much now, but I think there's 2 things going on. I think there is a real physicality to some of this, and we must be dealing with some others among us, although there is a clearly some kind of I don't know, almost like a planetary poltergeist where there's a real component that has to do with human consciousness. But this kind of stuff you're talking about right now, frankly, gives me the creeps.
No, I when I first joined the ERT, they have Zoom meetings on a monthly basis, just to talk and have speakers come. And then I took a opportunity. It was a little bit of a break, and I said, "Hey, what do you guys? And you've been in this ERT group for a while. This is my first meeting. Well, yeah, what do you guys think the aliens are up to? Do you think that they're like very like space brothers here to help us? I mean, the Barbara Lamb side of the fence of the spectrum, where they're only here to do good." Or I said, "Do you think that they're here to take over and wipe us out?" The more malevolent view that Dr. Jacobs has, there's 2 ends of the spectrum. And they said, and the best answer I've ever heard, I've repeated it several times, is what Dr. Medich told me. He said, "John, it seems like there's about 50 different species coming here, and some of them are very positive, loving species at one end of the spectrum, like you say, and then there's some species that seem to be here doing some very negative things, painful things to people and such." And they said, but the great majority are in the middle. It's like a bell curve, and we don't have any idea what they're doing in the middle of that bell. And I thought that was probably the best description I've heard of what's going on. Why are they here? We really don't know. I've talked to some people who say, it's kind of like trying to, because some people say, why don't they land on the White House lawn and explain it all to us? And some people have said, well, it'd be kind of like you walking up to an anthill and saying, "Take me to your leader." It'd be like, why bother? They would never understand. And so I think we might be in the same position that they maybe we really wouldn't understand. Although you kind of got into is it a psychological, is it a paranormal phenomenon or not? And when I started out back in looking at this phenomena back in junior high and high school, I envisioned, I had the mental set of, okay, there's all these topics, ESP, ghost, life after death. Those are in the spiritual, metaphysical realm. And then on the other side, there's this, there are these phenomena, the UFOs, and these are some kind of mechanical craft made of exotic metallic materials or something that have some hyper propulsion system advanced thing that allow them to travel through the stars.
You and I were on exactly the same page. Go ahead.
And the more recently, as I've gotten, I'm not just like back in high school reading about this stuff. I'm actually talking to people and learning a lot more. I started to get the impression that no, there's some overlap between metaphysical and UFOs, and it kind of made sense to me because all the sightings, all the encounters with entities, they always communicate telepathically. They seem to be able to take people through physical walls into their craft.
Yeah.
You know, there's some kind of, they have some familiarity, it seems, with paranormal, psychic abilities. It seems to be part of their standard technology in their everyday world. They're right. Much more, if they're more advanced, and they've incorporated this into their technology. So could they, I've often thought, I've done a little bit, just a tiny bit of astral travel myself. And I know a lot about it. So when you're astral traveling, when you're in the astral, you can go at the speed of thought from one place to another.
Okay, now hold on a second. Now, did this come about accidentally? You know, like in the dream state, and all of a sudden you're doing the astral traveling, or did you go through a process where you tried to do it?
Class, I don't want to lose my caboose on the other thing.
Oh, okay, you have to take it wherever you want to go, but I don't want to lose the astral travel part.
I was taking it. This was probably about 20 years ago. There's a fellow named William Buhlman, Buhlman.
Okay,
he's a premier. He tries to teach people how to astral travel. And I took a weekend class of his 20 years ago. And he tried real hard. They're using various methods and sounds and techniques and that. And, okay, try this, try that. You know, we're going to, okay, next time class, we're going to do this and that. Gave you a lot of instruction. But at one point, I think it was the second day, I did feel like I somehow lifted up out of my body, and I walked outside. It was dark inside because they pulled all the curtains to make it dark so you could concentrate in your exercise. And I walked out onto the balcony, and there was William Buhlman, you know, standing out on the balcony. And I thought, oh, look at that. And I walked up to him, and he was leaning against the balcony. And I went to lean against the rail on the balcony and went right through the rail. I was like totally shocked to go right through the rail and ended up falling on the grass 2 stories below. I thought, this is not something I would have imagined. You know, that sensation of trying to lean against the railing and just going right through it and falling down the ground, that was bizarre. So I kind of think I was astral traveling at that point. So that, I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yes. I couldn't, I've wanted to do that myself.
William Buhlman now is working at the Monroe Institute down in, so if you can still run across him. I'd recommend his books. He travels regularly and has many interesting things to say. But I was going to say, what I kind of envisioned was with the saucers, how could they get here this quick? How could they bypass the speed of light? Well, what would happen if they took their craft, you know, they decided, hey, Martha, you want to go to Earth and get some fresh water? Sure, I'm ready to go with you, Henry. And so they get in their craft, they move their craft up into the astral plane, they shoot across the universe at the speed of thought, they drop back down into the physical, fill up their jugs with, you know, fresh Earth water from the Great Lakes, hopefully, and then pop back into the astral and get home in time for dinner. Yeah.
So we're there in the sort of a transition stage, which they may be able to go in and out of at will. That would make them look much more ethereal or more like an apparition than a solid entity from elsewhere.
It could, although people, you know, there are people. There are cases, many cases, most, where the beings appear physical. and you're on a physical craft, and
Right.
your body is actually physically taken, your body is actually physically examined. Although I run across with people that, like the lady I'm talking to that doesn't want to have her implant taken out, she's never seen a UFO. She has these experiences only like when she's in bed, and usually when she's in a dreamy sort of state. And I would dismiss them as, well, you're just dreaming, lady. I mean, a real skeptic might, but based on what I know about what abductees experience, this woman is experiencing exactly what the literature talks about. I even asked her, I said, have you read stuff on UFOs? This is a standard question I'll ask. How much have you read before you talk to me? How much have you read before? How much have you looked on YouTube? What do you know about this phenomenon? And this lady told me I didn't really start reading until about 12 hours before you called. So she couldn't have absorbed too much, but her story matched a lot of what other people were reporting. So now here's a case where this woman is having almost strictly paranormal and psychic experiences, not physical things. I really find that the more and more I look at this, there's a real overlap between the metaphysical worlds and ufology. The UFOs, yes, there's a nuts and bolts quality to them, but there's also this very otherworldly, multidimensional quality, which would make sense if these are advanced beings. Then they probably, feel comfortable and use multi-dimensions in their everyday life.
Now, some of them could also be sort of phantoms from the mind or whatever. But when you mentioned the aspect about floating through walls, I've looked at there are incidents in folklore. There's even one of the contactees, Orfeo Angelucci, and then a more modern abduction experience in Wales in the late 70s, where these people were having very real experiences to them, not like in a dream state, but the person, they could see them in their bed in like a rigid trance state, but they were going through the walls and talking to other entities. So they hadn't left anywhere. This was all in the mental realm, but it wasn't merely a dream. I mean, it had a beginning, middle, and an end. It wasn't like a free thought kind of, the way dreams meander. It wasn't like that at all.
It's hard to figure out, and I don't claim to have the final answers. I can just tell you what I've heard and what seems to be reasonable. And I tell people too, hey, if you run across anybody that says they have all the answers, don't buy their book.
That's right.
No, I don't think anybody really has the answers. Some are more knowledgeable than others, but just talking about this, a story came to mind. One of the abductees I talked to said she'd been picked up while she was a little kid, about 5 years old. And they did a physical exam on her, and then they let her run around on the craft where she found these other kids sitting in a circle, looking maybe slightly unhappy, like they'd rather be playing. But this was sort of a game that the aliens were trying to teach them to keep a ball, this little glowing ball, aloft using just their mental powers. And then it got to be her turn, and she tried, but she couldn't do it. But after some practice, she found that, yes, I can do this. And that was like her instruction while she was on the craft. And her mom had also been taken, but had been taken down a different hallway. And when the end of the abduction occurred, they said, okay, it's time to go now, little Sally, or whatever her name was. And they floated her back down to her bedroom. And as they floated her out of the craft through the air to her bedroom, she passed by a tree. And as she passed by the tree, she reached out and grabbed some of the green leaves that were on the branches. When she woke up the next morning, she thought, wow, was that a dream, or is this for real? And she pulled back her bed covers, and there were green leaves under her cover.
Oh, man. Yep.
So was it a physical thing? Was it a mental thing? I would say in that case, it was certainly physical, but then I got this other lady that is having these abductions and having these pregnancies and maybe producing hybrid kids, and that seems mostly psychic, you know.
Definitely more than one answer. I mean, there's even when you talked about some of the, kind of tongue-in-cheek, some of the water gathering. Of course, there's several different instances where strange craft, are sucking up water either without any means or with a hose or whatever. But there's even a couple cases that are disturbingly similar to elements of folklore, where you see the entity scoop the water in a bucket or ask for water in a bucket and take it aboard the craft and take off. You think, are these the guys that didn't have the nice water sucker installed? You know, the Acme water sucker from Alpha Centauri?
Well, there do seem to be many species coming here. Some, they maybe have different ways. One of the topics that we've been looking at a little bit in the ERT, the Experiencer Research Team, is talking a little bit about what kind of symbols do people see on board the craft? Is there any commonality to it? And some of them, some representative symbols that are remembered by abductees and sketched on a piece of paper, they got some similarities, but there's differences too. And one of the members of our group pointed out, well, if you came to Earth and you wanted to see what do human beings write like, what is their writing like? Well, you could get a wide variety. I mean, you could get Chinese characters. Sure. You could get English language. You could get Russian Cyrillic. You could get cuneiform writing from ages ago, hieroglyphics from the Egyptians. Which is the human writing?
Now, are these symbols that are seen on the outside of the craft you're talking about?
All over.
Or mostly in context?
Yeah, usually in some kind of a book or something. Okay. But it's funny that when people, there's triangular craft, they got 3 lights. Huh. Then sometimes you see the beings on board the ship and they've got a uniform and they've got like a little triangular shape on their uniform. When people wake up from their abduction, marking 3 marks in a triangular shape. There's something significant about it. Who knows? But I think there was a fellow I took one time, actually a vet from Afghanistan. He was in the Army. And
okay, we had, ladies and gentlemen, we had a brief technical difficulty here, and we were losing John there for a little bit, but I think we're okay now. So
it's kind of interesting, Steve, that you have these little interruptions. Now, I've had these interruptions before on just regular, normal conversation, so I don't want to ascribe great significance to it. But there are other things that start to occur with abductees, and then there's the phenomena which I'm sure you've heard of, which is the researcher syndrome.
Oh, yes.
When you start to get a little closer to what the aliens are about, they notice.
Well, that's interesting because
they start screwing around with you.
Well, you see, I'm one of those guys where I haven't discovered me yet, I think. Nick Redfern's written a book recently called Black Diary, and he talks about all kinds of phenomena like that where people get into different aspects of the paranormal and the way it kind of comes back on them. And even some of the Men in Black phenomena kind of that sort of thing happens, but I pretty much am not. I'm one of those guys that apparently they're messing with, maybe with you and other people that have seen UFOs, because they seem to leave me alone for the most part.
I can't really say I've experienced anything, but I have a little cabin up north I'm fixing up. It's a little crummy cabin that needs a lot of work. And my friends up there have said, hey, make sure you don't put any bird seed in the spring because that draws the bears. And you don't want bears, coming around and ripping up your bird feeder. And, I thought, wow, so they're drawn to bird seed? Wow, so I better run to the hardware store and get some because I want to see these bears. So when they talk about, if you get too close that they will start, I think good, If that causes Men in Black to come to the door, I'd be really interested in meeting a Men in Black. I guess I'm not too scared. Being an old guy,
I guess I kind of feel the same way. Now, some of them, John Keel and others have chronicled, even Keel, when he was investigating the Mothman prophecy stuff, he got heavy into it. He freely admits how paranoid he got. I mean, he was having really bizarre stuff happen. There's some, I won't get into it, but there's a possibility even that the government was messing with him a little bit. But
you do wonder who it is. Some of these things like I have an abductee that I talk to on a regular basis still in Michigan. And that's the thing too. The difference between a field investigator and a ERT member, you kind of get to know these people that you talk to and the abductees. And I've kept in touch with a number of them. I say, hey, as long as you want to talk, that's fine. You want to call me back, in the next month or two, that's fine. We can talk again if something new comes up. But anyway, this lady in Michigan, who's an abductee, has said, yeah, the last couple of years I've been seeing these black helicopters circling around my house. Wow. Well, how do you know that they're like maybe not just scoping something out? No, they're circling right over my house. And then at one time there was a white van parked at the end of my long driveway, and they'd been sitting there for like a half hour. My husband went out there with a shotgun, and the guys took off real quick. But it does seem to happen. And who is it? Now, probably people in black helicopters, or I had somebody report that they've seen the black helicopter so close that they can look inside and they can see the pilot and see the covering on the pilot's seat. These are not aliens. This is some governmental organization.
Right.
Why would a governmental organization be interested in fantastical stories from abductees? Well, I think, and that is my interest in abductees, if you want to know what the UFOs are up to, what better source to inquire at than people who have been on the craft and experienced the aliens? They're the people that could provide some answers. And I think if there probably is some government or quasi-government organization that is studying the whole UFO phenomena, and they probably have come to the same conclusion. What better source of information about what this is all about than the abductees? So phone lines get tapped, houses get surveilled, white vans sit outside, men in black come to your door.
Sure.
Are these the aliens? I don't think so. Some of them seem bizarre, but most of them seem quite human-like. Like it's probably some governmental organization that's keeping track of the abductees.
Well, they must, as far as I go, they must figure that either I'm on the wrong track or they've got bigger fish to fry. Because so far, you'll be the first to know, John, if I start seeing black helicopters or white vans down the end of my street.
I asked my girlfriend when I'm up north at my cabin, have you ever seen any helicopters? Well, actually, she said, yeah, I have seen some helicopters flying overhead. But she laughed. She says, if the men in black ever come to the door, I'm going to say, he's right there hiding in the closet.
We'll give you up right away. Huh?
Yeah.
Tell us what I know you've had several pretty much case studies of people that have had abduction experiences. And I know that you're not the kind of person that just says, oh, that's interesting, and then move on. You stay with people for a long period of time. And if they have more to talk about, or if they have continuing experiences, you keep following up on it. Are there any particular cases you'd like to talk about that are of real interest that you've been investigating?
Yeah, I think I generally get assigned and I don't know, maybe it's luck of the draw. I think it's because the state tech chief knows that I'll dig in a little deeper. He'll give me the more, what I feel are the more meaty sightings. Like I just got an assignment to somebody saw a triangular UFO. Whoa, okay, I'd like to dig into that one. But there was a fellow that reported seeing a UFO. Oh, I was going to say that I don't know what most field investigators do. I don't ask them what their business, but I've read their reports online, and it seems like they zero in on the case, the subject case that was reported, and they don't go much farther. Like, we need to knock these things out quickly because MUFON demands that things be knocked out quickly, and so they want to get that case done and move on to the next case that they've been assigned. I tend to ask more questions, and the questions I'll ask are, have you ever had any other sightings? Or you ever had any psychic experiences? Or did you have imaginary playmates when you were a kid? Do your kids have imaginary playmates?
Now, John, that's excellent. That is the John Keel method. He would say his catchphrase was, "Ask the experiencer what they had for breakfast," and that simply meant find out about them. Not literally if they had Wheaties or anything like that, obviously, but find out about them. What else have they experienced, and the whole thing.
And this and so on and because of that, I end up spending a lot of time on a case because a lot of times people have had other experiences. I'm thinking of one gentleman in particular that when I asked him, well, he said actually he's had about 4 or 5 sightings. Wow. And he proceeded to tell me about, what he saw when he was a kid with his brothers, and then what he saw with his family on a porch, and then what he saw with his wife out zigzagging lights in the sky up north, and then this bell-shaped object that was floating alongside their car. Every one of the sightings had multiple witnesses. He put me in touch with the other witnesses. We talked. And so I confirmed the sightings. And then I said, okay, what about number 5? Well, I don't know. I think it was just a dream. Come on, I said. No, I don't want to talk about it. Come on, I said, you're teasing me. Tell me what the sighting was. Okay, well, he said, my wife and I had an argument, and, we were actually in the process of getting a divorce. We'd even gotten lawyers. It was that bad. And after this argument, he thought, well, to hell with it. I'm going to go up to my cabin up north. He had a cabin up north, too. And just get away from her for a week or two. So he said he woke up in the middle of the night. Now, this is a tough guy. He'd been in the Army, Special Forces. He raced motorcycles. He raced cars. I asked him if he had any scars or anything. Lots of them. He said, from wrenching on cars and that. He says, I've had a lot of, okay. But he said he woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning, drenched in sweat and with an overwhelming feeling of fear. And he remembered something about little beings being on the side of his bed. And he was so scared that he went and got his revolver and held it in his. Right. Then he went back to sleep. And what he reported was that he said he saw these beings next to his bed. They were like little grays, about 3.5 feet tall. And then there was one taller one. And then he recalled being on a metal table. I'm summarizing greatly, but he was on a metal table, and he woke up on this table, and he started to get up like part way up, and the little short guys were concerned, like, what should we do? And I said, well, how could you tell? Were they talking amongst themselves? He said, no, I could see their heads moving back and forth, between them, like, what are we going to do now? The guy's waking up. And then the tall one reached over. He said he seemed to have like a claw-like hand and touched him in the middle of his back. And at that point, he blacked out again and then woke up and found himself in his bed with a pain in his back. And I said, how bad of a pain, on the scale from 1 to 10? Oh, he said about a 3. And how long did it last? Oh, about 2 days. He was so concerned about this pain in his back, he went to a neighbor's house and asked if they could take a look at his back to see if there were any marks there. Now, I pointed out earlier, this is a tough guy. This is not a guy that would normally be so frightened of a nightmare that he would grab his pistol and hold it the rest of the night in his hand so he could sleep in bed. This is not a guy that would be so frightened by a nightmare that the pain would still be there 2 days later and he would go to people next door to see if he had a mark on his back. That is not what normally happens with a nightmare.
Right.
I just thought it was a very interesting case. And as far as them messing around with us here, if they are, I don't think so. I think it's probably Skype, but one needs to be attentive to these things and not just dismiss them as coincidence. I see we're kind of running out of time, so I want to tell you this one story. This one abductee had what she thought. She was also a medic in. I was starting to tell the story about the other guy. I guess I'll never finish that. But
we got about roughly 8 or 10 minutes left, so just take it where you want to go.
So I can maybe go back to Let me go back to the other story and finish that. I was talking to the guy that was he was in a medic in. It's funny, they were both medics. I hadn't thought of that before.
Huh.
In Afghanistan, came back with severe PTSD, and when he wrote me email before we talked physically. I mean, talked on the phone. That he had severe PTSD, had been hospitalized several times, and was currently on meds and on not working on disability. I thought, oh boy, this is going to be a touchy case. I better tread lightly with the guy. Well, what I did, first of all, I assured him, because he was frightened of being abducted again and what might happen to him. They were still continuing. And I pointed out to him that, look, in the history of all these abductees, no one seems to have been terribly hard. Everybody got returned, at least everybody we know of got returned. And they don't seem to be out to take over the world, because if they wanted to, they could have already. So that doesn't seem to be their objective. I don't think that they mean harm to us. So, and that made him feel a little better. And then I said, thinking that he had a military background, I said, let me give you an assignment. Next time they take you, I want you to be like our spy on the craft. Make note of as many details about what's going on in the craft as you can. If you see any instruments on the wall, any controls, if you notice anything unusual, any symbols or writing, try and memorize all that. And for God's sake, I said, if they turn their backs on you for a second and you have a chance to pocket one of their little, instruments in your back pocket, please do so. And so he said, okay. And I left him with a good feeling, I think, because now he had an assignment.
A mission,
A mission, And it wasn't just that he was a victim. Now he's turning the tables on them, and he's going to be investigating them.
That's great.
So he felt a little better about that. Which leads me to my second story. The lady that had the implant, that suspected she had an implant, and I was quite interested in getting this implant analyzed. Now, she had some proof of this. I think I showed it at the Michigan MUFON meeting, an x-ray of her skull, which she had done in April last year. She'd had a previous x-ray 2010 that showed nothing. But this x-ray in her skull, the reason she went to the doctors was she had the sinus problems. It was like a blockage in her nose. She couldn't figure it out. So she went to the doctor, because she gets free VA care. And they did an x-ray, and then she forwarded the x-ray to me, and it clearly showed, I showed it to a doctor who said, yep, that's a metallic object somewhere in her head, but I can't tell where, because it's a front view and I don't have a side view. And she was going to go for further CAT scans, and I said, listen, if they're going to take it out, can we send it to this lab to have analyzed? Yeah, sure, she said. Well, we were trying to figure out where it was. Was it in the front of her head, in the back of her head? Where was it? And I suggested, why don't you use a compass to, like, if it's iron or iron based,
that's a good idea.
Move a compass back and forth in your head and see where it's deflecting the most, and that might give you an ideal location. She did one better. She said she had a stereo in her garage that she could plug her phone into, and if she didn't have her phone plugged into the little mini HDMI cable, as the end of this cable moved around, as she brought it close to metallic things in her garage, it would cause the speakers to crackle and hum. So she used the end of the cable as like a diagnostic device and ran it around her head. And she found when she brought it to the back of her head, the speakers were crackling and humming. So she knew that the object was somewhere in the back of her head. Anyway, fast forward to August, she got this a CAT scan done, and the CAT scan didn't show any object there. And I thought, damn. I had it all arranged with this PhD chemist in Ohio in a lab that was going to analyze it, and told me the procedure to send it to, and now it's like gone, What was it ever there to start with? Now you're starting to wonder. Well, the doctors asked her, have you ever had any surgery on your head? And the lady said, no. Why? And they said, because you've got bits of bone and cartilage missing from your skull.
In the back?
I never did find out where, but it's kind of like the aliens. Maybe they knew I was hot under trail. I was going to get this implant, and maybe they went in ahead of time and took it out, so we couldn't have it and analyze it. But they left their footprints in the form of missing bits of bone and cartilage. Maybe. The lady I talked to in the PhD chemist that was going to do the analysis, I said, have you ever, because Dr. Lear has had implants disappear right in front of him and the other doctors when they remove them.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, vanish in front of his eyes?
They'll take them out. They'll put them in a dish. Usually they put them in a dish of blood because they want to keep it in the original media.
Right.
And as the doctors are looking at this thing, it just sort of like, disappears like a transporter, and it's gone.
I know some of them have actually broadcasted on like 2 different FM frequencies that they've taken out.
Well, that's another topic real quick. I'll move on. So I asked this PhD chemist that was going to do the analysis in Ohio, I said, you ever seen anything like that? She said, no. She said, the closest, I've heard of it, but she said the closest I've ever come is I asked one time, somebody took an implant out, and I said, put it in a, container of blood, so it's in the original media, seal it up good, and then mail it to me. And so they did. The box arrived FedEx, carefully taped up and, real solidly. And when she opened it up and she opened the container up, yeah, there was blood in there, but there was no implant.
Huh.
Like somehow they came and took it in transit.
Or the technology is such that they know when it's been removed, it just kind of like self-destructs in 10 seconds or whatever.
Yeah. I know we're kind of running short on time, but I've tried to communicate with the aliens using a medium, and that's a long story. But one of the questions, when I did finally get through to what seemed to be the aliens, I asked them, I said, are there any artifacts here on the planet that I can find, any bits of crashed saucers? Can I dig around in the dirt somewhere? And they said no, the medium said, they're telling me no, that any time that they happen to leave something, they quickly retrieve it because they don't want us to find anything. And probably because this is an interesting story too, I asked them a bunch of questions, and like one of the questions I asked was, are you guys here living amongst us? And as she said, she started to laugh and she said, no, they're telling me no one wants to stay here.
Well, I guess I'll buy that.
Which, to my mind, I think in my hypnosis sessions and people say, well, how do you know they're real and not something just imaginary? It was just a surprising nature of that answer. No one wants to stay here. I wouldn't have imagined that. I would have thought they would have answered. If I had to imagine an answer, I would not have certainly imagined that.
There must be some nice places to vacation here, but we're just about out of time. I want to make sure that people can contact you, find out where they can contact you if they want, or any other information you want to put out.
If you wanna send me an email or something and talk a little further, my name is John Boudries. My email address is BUDRYS. That's my last name. And then 2012, the year the world was supposed to end, at gmail.com.
Excellent. And any other information you want to impart?
If people want to read something further, I already mentioned experiencer.org. That's a good website to go to. Kathleen Martin has got a pretty good website with lots of articles on it. Open Minds, MUFON, Newsfork, right. All good sites. And a good book, some authors, Nick Pope, I wrote down a couple, Preston Dennett.
Oh, yes.
Barbara Lamb, Gwen Farrell, Mary Rodwell, and a book that just I think is a good overall book is The Close Encounters Man. It's about Hynek.
Dr. Hynek, right.
And I think his rendition, I forget the author's name, but I think his rendition of different cases are very good and include details that I have not read in other accounts.
So. And also, if anybody wants to meet us in person, I don't know why they would, but they might. They can attend the Michigan MUFON meetings,
yes.
Headed by Bill Konkoleski in Flint, Michigan, and they can find that.
Well, are they, because the Wally's restaurant where it's normally located, they had a flooding problem. Now, have they resolved it?
I think they're on the verge. But anyway, John, we're up against the time, and I have to say thank you very much for being here. Stand by because I want to talk to you for a second, and I'm going to do my stellar closeout here. Again, I want to thank John Boudries for being here. It was a great hour, and we're going to have him back. I also want to thank Irene Allen Block and Mark Johnson, our fearless leaders here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. A special thanks to Andy Mercer, my part-time co-host and full-time producer. And thanks to Brian Zeller, who does the original music for the show. And I am Steve Ward, your humble host here on the High Strangeness Factor, a displaced Yank here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Thanks for listening. I will see you all again in a fortnight. Take care.